Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is Wealthwise on Biz Talk Today TV. I'm Jeff Hurst, your host. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be joining you here every week on Fridays after the New York close. Each week, I'll do a brief rundown of my market at a glance with a check of the 5 disciplines: seasonal, fundamental, technical, monetary, and sentiment. I'll review the week we just finished, look ahead to what's in store for next week, update you on my outlook, and we'll dive into my featured guest interview. This week, we have my good friend, the venerable Adrian Zduńczyk, the crypto Birb, calling in from Poland. He's the legend, the guru. We'll get his take on Bitcoin and crypto. So first of all, seasonality. I'm going to throw up a chart here. So here's the 5 disciplines: seasonal, fundamental, technical, monetary, and sentiment. This is what we look at every month, all the time. These are the major points of the market that we track. Seasonally, March Madness continues, and the question is, can the Ides of March bounce and the luck of the Irish stem the tide here? We had triple witching week, quadruple witching, OPEX, which kind of has leaned bullish over the years, and even though the news flow was pretty negative, a little troublesome, S&P did eke out a gain. So with the next week, we have the week after triple witching, notoriously weak. The Dow is down 22 at 37, but up the last 5. The end of Q1 is prone to volatility and weakness. Since 1990, it's been down 35 years. And the last 3 or 4 days of March have been weak. You can check the blog post we put out today or the social media feeds for more detail. But basically, the end of quarter portfolio restructuring tends to play a role as managers try to lock in gains or cut losses and establish positions for the next quarter. These declines can kind of begin on the last 4th to last or 3rd to last trading day. But looking just again at the post-election year issue, where the year has kind of plagued Republican administrations. Kind of the last time that we saw this sort of similar shift was when Reagan took over after Carter with the crisis of confidence, and we had a bit of a shakeup there with 81. The Dow being down about 9.2% for the year, S&P down about 9.7. So this sort of tracking pattern here that you can see, the red line, for those of you that are looking at the chart of 2025, sort of brings our worst case scenario odds more into play, kind of increases those. If the market can't really recover soon and get back into positive territory or up near the sort of, pink and black and green lines, which are, incumbent losses and all post-election years, and or my aggregate cycle, which is all years, post-election years, as well as the 5th year of the decade. If you can't get back up into there, we're going to have some rougher sledding. The post-election year cycle that you see here, the aggregate pattern shows, kind of a rally from the end of March into May and June, even into mid-July, that Christmas in July, sort of mid-July peak we had last year. But I still expect some weakness in Q3. If things don't improve, we might be looking at one of these old school Republican administration patterns where market was sort of rough, like we had in 57, 69, and 73. I've got 53 through 81 in this line here. But you can see we've dipped down into that area. It'll be encouraging and constructive. We can get back up there. But still some trouble for Q3. So fundamentally, this week, existing home sales were up. That was kind of encouraging. Consumer sentiment's been a bit shaky. Next week, we've got the final Q4 GDP revision. Don't expect much there, kind of a nothing burger, as the second revision was kind of negligible. But the PCE inflation is something that's going to be watched closely. If it's flat or lower, that would be bullish. Anything above, I guess the Cleveland Fed's estimate is 0.2% month over month. That could spook stocks. Anything above 0.3% for the month would be troublesome, and more so, than just the 2 number. Here's our projection. This is taking the monthly, month over month change here and projecting out into the future. If we stay in the 3 2 or 1, 0.1% for the month. We're going to be trending down with inflation over the next several months, and if we don't get back down under 2 or less, we're going to have some trouble getting to the Fed's level here. So this is just inflation should be something to be watched closely. So technically, I've added a new line in here right around the March 13 lows, around 55.20. If this can hold, that would be constructive. If we bounce off of that in the end of Q1, week period, or the last week of the month that I mentioned earlier, we could potentially create one of those nice W1, 2, 3 technical bottoms. Today's close, interestingly, 56, 67, and 56, right around this support level that has now become resistance. So, if we can't hold this level here, this 5,500, that brings in those September lows I've mentioned, have been highlighting around 5,400 or 5,390 as we have here. Sentiment. My preferred sentiment measure is this Investors Intelligence bullish and bearish advisors, where bears now have outnumbered bulls for the second week in a row. Full disclosure, my newsletter, Almanac Investor, is one of the advisory services tracked in the survey. But we're in the vicinity down here where we've got more bears than bulls. This is the difference of bulls and bears tracked against the S&P 500 here, where we start to see, where some lows can be reached. Looking back to, this was June 22 and the October 22 bottom, you can see how much lower we got, and that the first foray below the zero line where there were more bears than bulls was just the beginning. Doesn't mean we have to go all the way down here, but it's starting to get to that point where we could turn, at least get a tradable low. One of the things, anecdotally, Jeff Dunlock is back on TV now, so we're probably close to a low for whatever that's worth. So with that, I'm going to take a quick break, and then we are going to bring on Adrian, talk about Bitcoin, and get some a little history from him and have a chat. So we'll be right back.
Hi everyone, I'm Veronica Dudo, and welcome to Buy,
Hold, Sell. If you have the Russians that are going into Ukraine, the Americans and the Germans and everyone else in Europe is going to say, hell no.
If Russia doing things, logically was their MO, I'd agree with you. Yeah, Todd, why don't you get him on a phone call right now? Hello, you.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm here with my good friend, Adrian Zduńczyk. He's a CMT, a chartered market technician, a successful Polish entrepreneur and leader. He's the only chartered market technician from Poland. He's actually calling us back in from Poland right now. What's it, 9:30, 10 o'clock over there? Appreciate that. He's a cryptocurrency specialist, the founder and CEO of the Birb Nest. I call him the Birb. Birb Nest is a dynamic startup scaling up to becoming a worldwide blockchain consulting company. He's quite respected in the industry. He's now up to over 700,000 Twitter or X followers. I follow him. He's a great follow. It's Crypto Birb, right? _ Birb, I think. You can just Google him too, like everybody else. He originally was a chemical engineer, and he has a master's of management and finance. I guess that's kind of like an MBA over there. He's a performer, a mentor, an influencer, and a good friend. So, Adrian, so good to have you on. Thanks for joining me at this late hour. Appreciate that. We've become pretty good friends over this past several years. I know he's been a big fan of the Almanac. We appreciate his the props and the shout outs he gives us. I guess we first connected personally at the CMT symposium in New York. It was April 23, I believe, and we locked horns. And then we ended up finally collaborating later that summer with a groundbreaking white paper on the seasonality of Bitcoin. It was an honor to work with him, and a lot of fun. It helped that we kind of spoke the same market cycle language, but we'll get into Bitcoin and crypto in a moment. But I got to get your story. You got to tell us your story, man. how did you go from chemical engineering into Bitcoin? Were you mining it back in the old days? And when did you start?
Oh man, Jeff, thanks so much. So good to be here, and thanks for all the kind words and the whole intro. Yeah, it's been a while, you know. The whole chemical engineering, I did a lot of polymer composites with graphene oxide, and with a lot of those different chemical compounds that you use in the polymers, kind of like in those different types of plastics, right? Because you can make a plastic, you know, like a proper chemical compound, you know, composite like a composite of polymers. You can make them conduct electricity, for instance. You can have a bottle of water that conducts electricity. Did you know that? You
I
have
did
you
not.
have you have tools like that, right? And there are materials
Well,
like
water
that. And
conducts electricity, though.
come again? Oh yeah,
Is it?
water, yeah, but I mean like the plastics, the vessels. Like if you, for instance, you know, if you want to use a metal, like for whatever conductivity of the electricity, or because of, I don't know, of the heat conductivity, because you know, it may be a good parameter for the electricity, it may be a good electric conductor, but maybe a very terrible heat conductor, for instance, right? And it may happen that, you know, the whole heat is going to accumulate within the metal, and it's just basically going to melt down. And to avoid those different types of kind of like situations of those metal properties, and at the same time, you know, having those different fractures, you know, in the metal, you know, the crystal form of it, you can literally, you know, just break it apart. And when you don't want to break it apart, you want to have your chemical reactions and the production in the factory efficient, optimal, and stuff like that. You have to use a lot of those different chemical technology optimizations, which is what I did initially for the studies. And
Did you do anything with graphene?
I did with graphene. I did with graphene oxides. I did with PVA, the polyvinyl alcohol, with the PCV or PVC, I should say, polyvinyl chloride as well. So there are a lot of those different, you know, those different polymer composites. But ultimately, you know, I figure, you know, I have after hearing so many stories of my friends and peers that after they did the PhD, there was still no job for them in the market, right? So there was a lot of underappreciation for the engineering skill and craft and craftsmanship, if you will, that ultimately led a lot of my peers just basically leave the country and pursue it somewhere else, which is where they're gonna get better pay. So that is US, that is, you know, that is Germany, that is, for instance, like UK. Like if you do, are you familiar with the Blu-ray technology, like Blu-ray?
Oh yeah,
Do you remember that?
Uh-huh.
Did you know, Jeff, that a Polish guy invented that in the 90s?
No. Did you know my brother
Exactly.
was a chemical engineer? My big
I
brother.
did. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he he had a job at Pfizer out in Easton. He made
Oh,
rust
there you
for a
go.
living.
There you
Magnetic
go.
oxide and red oxide, everything red. It's got rust in it.
Oh man. So do you see, we just kicked off. We always talk about the markets, right? And we just kicked off and opened up a whole new tornado
So you couldn't
of
get a job in the chemical engineering industry, and what you said? Let's mine some Bitcoin or what?
So, you know, but back in 2011 and 12, my grandfather used to trade Bitcoin and used to kind of like use Bitcoin for football bets, all right? Because he was at that time he was like mid-70s, I think. He was also Polytechnics grandfather, yeah. Also the Polytechnics software kind of like engineering and the computer science and stuff like that he did like in the 50s and 60s, and very smart guy, right? And except that, you know, he was a proper gambler. I mean, the horse betting, the football bets, the poker plays and stuff like that, and the day trading and stuff like this. And he would use Bitcoin for off of a darknet, basically, a dark web. He would buy it off the dark web and just to use it on the as a means of exchange, you know, for the football bets. So that was 2011 and 12. And I when I was little, I always looked up, you know, to kind of like when he was sitting locked down in a room and he wouldn't just enter, like let anybody else enter. And there was like those black screens and white lines and the white curves, just stickers just flying around. And I'm like, you know, why wouldn't you come out to the family dinner, right? And then after some time, I understood, you know, pretty much at one point I landed in the same place, right? Because day trading can lead you there, that you're actually isolating, which is not the best case. Though ultimately, you know, my chemical studies, you know, the engineering studies, we always would party a lot and deal a lot with the IT department, with the software developers, with the IT people. And in 2014, when we were having our window session, kind of like for the exam sessions, right?
Right.
They would
You're
say
still in
like,
school then.
That was 2014, yes, as far as I go back to the with the memory. Then you know, they would always say, "Oh yeah, like bro, you have to go check out Bitcoin, go check out Ethereum because Ethereum was just launched." And you like off there was like this empty Gox, you know, this Mt. Gox exchange that just, you know, got hacked ultimately, and there was like a lot of buzz in that very geeky environment. And I said, "Okay, guys, I'm honestly a walking zombie. I sleep for like 2-3 hours a day for one year straight." And I'm like, if I survive the studies, if I complete them, I'm gonna do it, right? Which is what I did. So I graduated, I did the master's in of engineering, and I had a 3-month window between those studies that I graduated from and the next ones in on the top school of economics in my country, in the
Mhm.
management and finance. Uh, then I used this window to kind of like go full time. I had my investment capital basically from my own earnings side. I had been pretty successful, you know, private tutor for sciences, for maths, for chemistry, and all this stuff because of the same exact problems that the schooling education system wouldn't let you.
Your
I
seed money
think,
was from tutoring.
yeah. I mean, it was honestly, it was twice or 3 times better pay than my parents combined at that time. My parents didn't kind of like bring me any riches, right? So everything is right there, my old backs and pains and the fears and sweats and stuff like this. Although ultimately, like I said, I had this window, I had the capital, I doubled, tripled, you know, in the first kind of like a first 2 weeks, and I'm saying, yeah,
And what
and
were
I
you just
figured.
trading? Bitcoin straight up or
So
Ethereum?
this was the altcoin season. This was all about altcoins. Bitcoin was about $1,000, I think 1,100 at that time.
So
Ethereum
this
was
is
like, you know,
altcoins.
oh yeah,
So
this was
did you
mostly
ever do any
altcoins.
Bitcoin mining or you're just trading it?
I didn't do Bitcoin mining because that was a little bit more, you know, geeky. This was more a little bit more
So just
science. Yeah, I didn't do Bitcoin mining though.
okay.
Yeah. So you know, all in all, I mean, I did the studies. In the meantime, I was kind of like figuring out for the full-time market, kind of like inside, you know, because I had dealt with currencies before, you know, when I figured, okay, the Polish currency wasn't going too well, so I started, you know, trading that against euro and against dollar and started observing the whole thing like 2015 and so on. And it was
This
like,
is all
uh,
between your studies. Just
yeah,
trading
that was going in
currencies and
parallel.
cryptos and altcoins.
Yeah, and only full time I went down deep, you know, and after I graduated, because that's when I had enough time. So I went full time in early. I think it was pretty much same time, right? What it is right now. And this is the 8 years ago, and the 9 years basically starting rolling or so. Pretty much exactly the same time.
So just
And
around before the CME future started trading, just around
oh, it was
2017.
yeah, CME was end of the year. It was December, I think.
So it
And
was probably early 2017.
that
So
was
you never
same
went into
time,
your field. You went
2017.
straight from all these degrees, straight into the trading of the currencies and the cryptos and stuff. And when did you do the CMT? When did you get the certification?
Exactly. After I have doubled and tripled and quadrupled and 5x my money and I lost everything, and then I did exactly the same, and then I did write it back down, then I figure, okay, there is something more to it. And until then, I had
So
already
after
read
you
about 50
made
books.
and lost several fortunes,
Yeah. I mean, multiple times, all right. I mean, now I'm, you know, I consider this just an expensive lesson over the time. Although, when I started developing and reading more about this after I, of course, lose a lot of money. I started developing and doubling down on the knowledge and trying to understand, okay, if there is some frequency, if there's some cyclicality, if there's some patterns to it, you know, that it happens again and again and again, that maybe it makes sense to double down and actually just go a little bit underneath basically and see what's happening, you know, below the typical consciousness of what's happening. And I started doubling down, you know, on the John Murphy's, you know, technical analysis of financial
John
markets,
Murphy's right.
going for Steve Neeson, going for all those kind of like classical, you know, charting principles, those classical charting and stuff like that. And I
This is
had read,
before you took before you went to the program.
and this is ultimately what kind of like I think once I saw the CMT kind of like mentioned somewhere on Twitter, I was literally, funny enough, just trying to recall that earlier today, and I didn't pinpoint like the exact moment I found about the CMT. I think it was someone that I saw that was wearing the CMT credential, and until then I had already learned like a lot of lessons, a lot of like I said, books and a lot of stuff. And I signed up for the course, and I ordered the book and did like the whole first kind of like initial chapter.
Mhm.
And I was pretty convinced, okay, like what can go wrong? I'm pretty okay, you know, I made some money, I understand, you know, how it works. I read 50 books already, so what can go wrong? And basically, I barely made it the first level out of 3, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, hold on a moment. Like, if I had read so many books, right, and I had barely made it to an actual, exam pass, then I'm like,
Yeah.
I want more of
There's
this.
three, just for people who don't know, there's 3 courses, there's 3 levels you got to pass to get your chartered market technician. It's not easy. It's a lot like the Series 7 stuff. It's pretty heavy technical stuff. And level 1, which full disclosure, I've taken. I didn't do as much studying as I should have, but I still got I got like an 86 or something. I'm gonna go back and get the full CMT. It's at some point over the next couple of years. But it's a pretty rigorous. It's a lot like the CFA. I know it doesn't get quite as much props as the CFA does, but the CMT is no joke. So when did you actually end up getting your chartered market technician certification?
Correct, Jeff. Thanks. That was 2022, around June.
So
That was the exam window. Yeah.
just about a year before we met.
Correct.
Yeah,
That was the
yeah.
first symposium I did.
Cool. That's great. I'm glad we went down there. Let's just shift gears a little bit and bring people in. This is one of the I'm going to pull up the seasonal chart that I did, which was part of our study. And I stripped out, you can see this, right, Adrian? Yeah.
Yes, it's perfect.
So I stripped out a lot of the other stuff I had in the old chart, and I just have the 2018 through 2024 pattern. And my partner, Christopher Mistel, Chris, he went ahead and adjusted this stuff. So this is 365 days trading. We rely on the stock charts data a bit. They seem to do it at the midnight Greenwich mean time there. So this is full 24/7, 365 trading with the cutoff on the end of the end of the day in Greenwich Mean Time. And I just started 2018. We've had this discussion because that's the fully first year after the futures started trading on the CME. Gives it some weight, some reality. It wasn't the old Wild West. And here's where we published our paper back in the sort of seasonal low, looking at our best 6 months and the Almanac type stuff. It was a great buy back then in 23. I wrote it a bit this past year's worth from 24 in the fall to I actually got stopped out of my I traded the IBIT this time around instead of the grayscale that I did last time. But my concern here is this diversion from the pattern with 2025 going the other way. I mean, maybe we're gonna, 1 year is different than a consolidated. Maybe we're gonna get back up there. So, it's concerning for me. Tell me about, and tell everybody out there what you've learned about the Bitcoin cycles and the seasonals and where we are now, and what's changing, and what's your outlook for Bitcoin this year?
Yeah, that's a perfect chart, Jeff, and you know very well that I'm a big fan of those charts of yours, so that's amazing. And it's true that it actually just pulled up a little bit different than than the trends would suggest on average. Right, and it seems that it's not only the Bitcoin case, but the whole market's just reacted pretty badly, right? And Bitcoin strongly correlates against S&P 500, against Nasdaq, against Dow Jones, right? Strongest to Nasdaq most of the time, and as a result, you would see Bitcoin that basically is read very often as a risk barometer or risk appetite barometer, by the big players.
Right.
You could have seen that basically drop down, about 30%.
What you discovered was that Bitcoin runs about 4 times the move of the Nasdaq or the Qs, right? Is it still correlate like that?
Yeah, I mean, part of the findings was, first of all, that it's strongly attached to whatever Nasdaq does, right? And because it is basically, it follows typical seasonal patterns that a Nasdaq would have, right? So that you would have in the typical S&P, and that's full credit to you, like a best 6 months, best worst 6 months, split November for April, then sell may go away, of course, which is where the least of the profit, entirely are generated for the end of Q2 and Q3 and stuff like this. and Bitcoin is strongly correlated to Nasdaq, which means that it's going to follow this base 8 months against the worst 4 months. All right, so which is you have a little bit of an upward leg extension towards like July. This is July typically, is a pretty okay month for Bitcoin, surprisingly, right? And it drives, and it is much driven by the liquidity factors, right? Such as the M2 money aggregate, basically the amount of liquidity, and the recent FOMC basically reading as well of keeping the rates unchanged. It all impacts the Bitcoin, not only on the short-term basis in terms of increasing the volatility and just bringing a little bit more noise and less of a signal. It actually is driven, by how much money there is at the market. Because if there is low liquidity, if there are not much cash in the market oscillating, there's like a lot of balance sheet reduction, and the Fed is going to keep selling off the bonds and so on, and keeping the rates unchanged or still high. It still is suppressing the markets.
Sure, what's going on in Washington D.C. and the new administration is adding to the volatility there. Are you concerned
Correct.
about it separating from the pattern here in February, especially?
Well, I would
one
say
of the things that we always, when we look at seasonality, is like if the market doesn't rally during the bullish season, that means there are other forces that are going on, and when that bullish season ends, those forces tend to have their say. So that's what I'm concerned about.
Okay, I mean, there is always a chance for it, right? However, ultimately, it's I think it was your study that since 1985, I think it was that the post-election year generally is the strongest candidate, especially in the last 40 years. Maybe not so much in the beginnings, right? However, lately it's rather be strong enough, and most of the biggest kind of like rallies, be it on Bitcoin or being on on other markets, where again, just go back 2021 to 17 to 13, and go way back. And
you think this is a good buy spot? Are we finding some support? I mean,
yeah. Even on a contrarian level, like contrarian levels, contrarian trading investing makes only sense if it reaches truly the extremes. And it seems that we are at one, basically, right? Because the put volumes are the biggest, like the pessimism on the financial advisor side on the traditional markets is the biggest. It's been in a long while. Like I said, the put and call ratio is there. The VIX, of course, slightly elevated lately.
sentiment's not really bearish.
Yeah, so there is a lot of unreasonably big amount of bearishness, and we're still hovering well above all-time highs for Bitcoin, the past all-time highs, right? So it's literally seems like the market tells you it's a bear market, but the trends are telling you a different story, which basically concludes that it's likely good divergence, good divergence for the contrarians to step in with the late buys. Like personally, I don't necessarily buy this simply because I had been loaded for the past 2 years or so on the buy and hold, right? So also when there was kind of like this 26th of September, right, when we released this paper, Jeff, you and I, then this is where I loaded heavily at $26,000, right? And contributing to like the way I see it right now, especially with this local divergence, against the typical seasonal trends, which again is likely tied to this Donald Trump's kind of like the way I explain it, I go on stage, is that you have a pendulum basically that just swings, right? And what Donald Trump did ultimately is just he extended the amplitude of the swings so that it swings a little bit more volatility, with more volatility, with bigger amplitude.
Bitcoin volatility itself.
Exactly, right? So you have seen way more fear than it's rationally explained, that it's reasonably explainable. And otherwise, the trends, the statistics, the history is rather strong, for what's ahead to the upside. April and May typically very, very strong months ahead. All the kind of like all the overvaluation metrics, methodologies, show you that pretty much the overvaluation has pretty much been cleared, it's disappeared, right? We're back to normal, we're back to mean, even literally on the 50-week average, quite right now. So it's a good spot
earlier with the market that this March 13th low, because I know I spoke to Larry Williams last week and he went long into that, and I think we maybe retest that at the end of Q1 weakness. I'm sensing from you, and we could get that little W123 bottom I mentioned, on Bitcoin as well. I'm sensing from you that you're a little bit, you're getting bullish again. You're getting constructive on Bitcoin, and then if we can hold this March low, we'll probably rally into the seasonal period. Is what I'm saying. Maybe even throughout the year. I'm hoping that happens
That's true
for the market as well. But I think that it's definitely got to prove itself on the charts. So, any other cryptos that you or altcoins or anything else that people should look at or that you think are worth getting into? Just a couple of quick points, and then we'll sort of bring it around and talk about what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, so see, let's put it this way, simplifying the whole thing. 70% of crypto is in two coins, right? 70% of crypto money is in two first positions. It's in Bitcoin and Ethereum. Bitcoin is 60% of the market share. Ethereum is 10% of the market share. When Bitcoin is this strongly consolidating the whole, like 60% of the total crypto market capitalization, when 60% of the money is in crypto and is in Bitcoin alone, then there is not much liquidity. It's just being drained out of elsewhere, leaving those basically most of those altcoins extremely undervalued, extremely underappreciated, extremely low. And again, in the name, it depends on what sort of lights of investment thesis there is, right? If it's fundamental investing, that they would say, okay, buy the lows, and because it's lowly valued, it's definitely underpriced and against any means. And even though it doesn't have cash flows or earnings, like based on historical trends and records, like it's every altcoin is bottomed out basically. It's just at the floor. It's either dipping or it's just consolidating.
Think it's worth getting into the altcoins right now? It's not your.
So since I'm a much more of a momentum investor, right? As in, if something works, I put more money in it. If it's something doesn't work, I'm not put much money in it. Then I'd say it's better to wait for confirmation as a trend follower, right?
Not working right now.
Yeah, I mean, Ethereum ever since Eric Trump and this World Library Finance again, from Donald Trump's kind of like family and this wealth management, they kind of like introduced a lot of investments in Bitcoin and Ethereum and all those other altcoins. Ever since, honestly, since they published they kind of like 400 million holdings in Ethereum, it's pretty much lost 40% of the value. All right. And the market hasn't been gracious truly to Ethereum, and Ethereum is a symbol of all the altcoins. So if Ethereum does well, if altcoins do well. If the Ethereum does pretty bad, the altcoins do pretty bad as well. This is some sort of like a lens to see through it. I mean, there are a lot of those allocations, that I'm kind of like having, because I also invest on a kind of like a more like a VC basis or a business angel basis. So I have a lot of vested interest in a lot of projects, be it in the real world assets that is supported by Larry Fink himself, talking about the tokenization of stocks and bonds as the next generation of assets, right? So I'm part of a Swiss-based equity holder of a Swiss-based hedge fund that is tokenized, basically, that is tokenizing the real yield, right? And there are a lot of different
other coins.
Come again?
You said token.
It's a tokenized hedge fund, right? You just like you can fraction. Imagine you own a fraction of whatever you want to own, and you put it on a blockchain. Then that's a tokenized fractionalization, basically, right? So I'm an equity holder of a tokenized hedge fund. Yeah, that's one thing. You can tokenize basically anything, right? You can tokenize a car. You can say, okay, this car is consisting of 10,000 pieces, and I'm putting the whole thing in a blockchain.
Coins or ones that are already out there trading?
Well, it depends on how you program it, right? Because it's ultimately, how you program the smart contracts and stuff like this. So all things concerned, I mean, we can go way deeper.
That's pretty deep. Let's not go that deep.
But that's a whole black hole of a topic on its own. So I have a lot of investments, in the RWAs, those real world assets, and tokenized in the AI kind of like department. There's a sector of crypto that is called this DeFi AI, which is decentralized finance using the AI, right? So you have the AI agents that are operating on a blockchain, and you speak to an AI agent that is fine-tuned, and you say, okay, send 5 Bitcoin fractions, to my mother. And their job is to know, okay, who's your mother, what's their address, or generate to address, and just operates this way, right? I have a lot of, and we work with a lot of projects, on the L1s, L2s, layer 1s, layer 2s. So the blockchains themselves and the kind of like the typical blockchain based applications, that have different utilities with wallets. So there's a lot of those vested interests that I have. So I don't have to go and kind of like ardently dive deep into altcoins per se. I have a lot of vested interest in those. It's kind of like some of this is liquid, the other parts is not. I have minor positions in SUI, for instance, right? The SUI. I have some investment in Fartcoin as well. There is a thing called Fartcoin. It's so funny. This is another sector, right? It's crazy. It's called
That
meme
one's not doing
coins.
so good.
So there's a funny thing, right? Because a couple of someone said the other day, I always speak about it on the stage on keynotes, that someone commented, okay, this is the Fartcoin stage of a cycle. When Fartcoin does well, this tells you, okay, the amount of stupidity in the market is through the roof. So you can use this
like the magazine cover indicator.
exactly. So you can use this in your own intelligence, and when it inflates and it's about to inflect, it's just shifting the polarity of the trends, is just flatten out and break into the upside. Well, this is the indicator of how much inflation and stupidity there is in the market. And guess what? In crypto at the peaks, there's incredible amount of stupidity, which means it's by definition going to do well. So you can use it as a leading indicator of what's pretty much ahead, and it's just waking up.
So it's just waking up now.
And yeah, so I have a lot of those minor stakes, but it's total probably maybe like 20% of total against against Bitcoin.
So tell us a little bit about the Birb Nest. This, I mean, you do a lot of stuff internationally, a lot of consulting, but for traders, people who might be watching, how do you help them? What do you do in the Birb Nest? There's a lot of education there, a lot of coaching and such, right?
Thanks. Yeah. So the Birb Nest is a nest for all the Birbs, right? And the Birb, by definition, is a funny meme version of a parrot. Cartoons, funny, parrots doing some funny stuff, doing some, silly things and different acrobatics and gymnastics, or chirping, or there are a whole kind of like a amount of videos of African gray parrots basically ordering, pig bellies, for instance, to your door for DoorDash, overnight when you're asleep and you're not aware of this, and you wake up to a whole package of 20 boxes of belly, pork bellies basically, or something like this. So the whole thing already started off as a little bit of a joke, as a meme, just like the crypto is. And then Crypto Burp was an alias basically for, because there were crypto cockroaches, crypto monsters, crypto dogs, crypto cats, crypto whatever. Parrot was not there. So, and I loved parrots for what they are. So that's how the whole brand. Right? Yeah, I have three of those. So that's how it kind of like the whole thing originated, but it all kind of like aligned with when I was start journaling my trades, and people say, okay, like we don't want to listen to you are saying, okay, 20 posts, I want to know this, I want to know that, I want to know specific things, I want to know how you just specifically solve and trade and invest. So they asked for organizing the whole thing in the community without kind of like noise and so on. So I kind of like follow through on that. So there was demand first and I provided the supply. It was in 2017, and kind of like it was a little bit like a loose go. I say like, okay, let's see what happens, because I didn't have any particular plan on this. The whole thing is the Birb Nest is an organization. It's not just me. There's like 20 people on the team, incredible people. I'm blessed to be the dumbest guy in the team. I always try to surround myself with the smarter people, which is exactly why we're having this discussion, Jeff. I always learn so much from you. And in the Birb Nest, we believe in the world where the financial freedom is available for everybody everywhere. That's the vision of the company. That's the vision of mine. That's what I truly believe, that regardless which country you're from, if it's the third country, if it's Philippines, if it's India, if it's US, if it's Poland, if it's whatever, each and every single person should have an equal access to knowledge, right? Because not everybody is going to take out the piece of the knowledge and use it, but everybody should be given knowledge. Right?
So you're giving people knowledge about crypto, Bitcoin, trading, answering questions, coaching. You've got trading rooms. You've got a Discord set up there.
So that is like, let's say 15, maybe 20% of my interest at the peak, right? These days. While the remaining 80% of that is basically complementing on the mission, right? Because the mission is to equip all those people who are from those poor countries and rich countries, every single person, with the best tools, with the best education, with the best software, with the best knowledge, reliable knowledge coming from the CMT background, all right, that they can trust, they can use to make better choices. And both individuals need it, and the business is needed, because so many times with so many scammers flying on crypto, so many projects, big projects. They are fundraising for tens of millions of dollars, basically, only to launch it, to launch their project, perfect product at the worst possible time because they don't know the seasonality, and the worst possible environment, and the worst sentiment with the wrongest people in this industry, with the biggest scammers, with the biggest fraudsters, and they burn $50 million just like that, for instance, with a snap of a finger. All that education that I had learned the hard way through all the mistakes and burning a lot of money, who to trust, who not to trust. The 5% of the people is the people that you can trust. I keep them very close. And that's what we do within the Web3 accelerator. So Web3 is a decentralized kind of like a thing, right? Web2 is a general centralized internet, as in like Google, Microsoft, NVIDIA. DeFi, or the Web3 internet, is basically where you have combination of blockchain and internet. You're the owner of your own data, you're the owner of your own money, you can do whatever you want with that money, and you don't have a risk that Google is going to tell you, okay, you cannot send this amount of money to that person. All right. And having this Web3 accelerator, again, where we accelerate to early stage projects, with the go-to-market strategies, with VC funding, with venture building, with, product fit development, with UX, UI, marketing, PR, like I said, the actual advisorship, the business angel, putting the whole thing together, giving this as a package of intel, of knowledge, is exactly what saves them against those wrong mistakes of launching during the summertime with the worst scammers, basically, only to find out that, they just burned $50 million just like that, right? And that's a legal problem. And we're helping them avoid this whole situation and grow faster. And that's 80% of my business focus.
And if people want to find out about it, where do they go? birbnest.com?
Thebirbnest.com is a way to go. That's correct. If they want to learn in a reliable fashion and stop losing money basically on dumb mistakes, the way I did for many years, that I learned how not to do it, then thebirbnest.com, the place it is. It also has a whole section /accelerator. So I welcome all the inclinations and all the questions about the accelerator as well there. Otherwise, a crypto underscore BIRB, Barbara, like the bird, except that it's Barbara at the end.
Mhm.
So it's crypto underscore BIRB. That's my profile. That's my Twitter X game.
Yep.
And I always read my DMs. I always answer the messages. So for any business inquiries, they can directly go there. There's so much more to be said, although,
So,
there's never enough words to give appreciation to you, Jeff.
I want to wrap it up with a little more personal side. You're going to be a dad soon. The crypto markets, the Bitcoin markets are pretty mature. They've been around for a while. So what's the future hold for you personally? What are you doing? I mean, yeah, I know you travel around a lot, but what goes on? You going to you're still biking and hiking? What are you doing for yourself in the future? Are you just going to keep trading Bitcoin, or what's up?
Oh man, I appreciate it. So that's actually the first time I'm talking about this in public. So I appreciate
Oh, I'm
opening the whole
sorry.
thing. That's all right. That's all right. I mean, ultimately, everybody's gonna know. The whole thing is I'm trying to settle down in terms of, I have had so much of a business expansion and so much of the personal brand expansion. Yesterday, I just learned I won some sort of like a most influential person in my country award or something like that, and I wasn't even there to pick it up on stage because I was elsewhere at that time. There's a lot of nice things happening. So I'm going to be doing this, and I'm, like I said, since I'm surrounding myself with extremely talented people, I'm trying to master the art of delegation and basically have enough of the time to save the space for the newborn anytime soon. And then ultimately, the going with the business, like I said, on where the focus is, where what is that is a good thing because that drives my mission. That drives my responsibility for who I am, for spreading this word of wisdom, for spreading this reliability in the crypto coming from the CMT that is missing, right? So much.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna keep on doing this. I'm gonna keep on entertaining and advising to a couple of celebrities and those high net worths, because they always have those questions. So this is what's gonna be kind of like on the, call it, VIP section of my life. But ultimately, trading Bitcoin or investing in Bitcoin is gonna dry up anytime soon. Like the next couple of months, I'm gonna start and initiate my exit plan. Right. So the second half of the year is gonna be exit. So that's gonna be going off to real estate, to gold, to silver, to cash, to private equity, to, I don't know, building my own investment, buying cars, watches, whatever else is gonna be outside of crypto is gonna be better time. That's gonna take up some time of mine. And watching and admiring your stuff, Jeff, is gonna
Well,
be
we
definitely
appreciate
a
the
lot of
knowledge.
time.
Thank you so much, man. We appreciate the knowledge you share with everybody all the time. And I can't wait for us to connect in person sometime soon, maybe over in Europe, maybe over here in the States. But I appreciate you taking the time to join me here today and share all your knowledge and all your information about the coin, the alt, the tokening, and everything that's going on out there. So thanks, Adrian. Hopefully we hang out soon.
Thank you so much. That's a heart from Poland.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Once again, I'm Jeffrey Hirsch for Wealthwise on Biz Talk Today TV, available wherever you stream your podcast. For more information on Stock Traders Almanac or my services, go to stocktradersalmanac.com and check me out on social at Almanac Trader, or just Google me in the Almanac, and we'll see you next week. Happy Friday.